Try some new jokes. The Romans, they adopted the Greek gods, right? But they gave them like wildly different names, Like Ares became Mars, right? Poseidon turned into Neptune, and then some asshole became Uranus. Yeah, speaking of Uranus, when they named that planet, all the scientists, they had this huge discussion about it, right? Whether to name it that or not. They weren't sure whether to name it Uranus or your butthole. What do you call a frozen Jewish person? Iceberg.
That's a good.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the Grand Canyon, it's pretty amazing, It's also why it's called my ex-wife's vagina. Yeah, I always believe that we shouldn't focus on our differences, What we should focus is on the similarities between people, right? A perfect example of that is dogs, Every single culture on earth has its own distinct dog breed, right? Like the Mexican dog is the Chihuahua, and then the French dog is called the Poodle, and then the Korean dog is called, dinner. Yeah, I watch Lock Up, It's like one of my favorite TV shows. I noticed that for men, prison is kind of like hell, you know what I mean? Like they stab each other and they'll throw shit on each other and stuff. It's pretty bad. But watching the show, I noticed that for women, prison is kind of like a summer camp. Yeah, they'd be braiding each other's hair, licking each other's pussies and stuff. Yeah, women's prison is supposed to be like Shawshank Redemption, but in reality, it's more like Brokeback Mountain. All right, this is the last one. This is something I just thought of today. I've been thinking maybe I should incorporate her, into my act, maybe kind of like a, whatever, when the puppet type of thing. Like this, hello, I'm Peanut the dog, and I love you. Yeah, let me tell you some stories. I'll tell you, when I first registered in the Army, right? Well, I'm an Army veteran, right? I forgot to tell you guys that. And, yeah, there's some good benefits being in the Army, But I'd say the best is giving old men hard-ons. Yeah, old men, they love hearing Army stories. It doesn't even matter what race they are. If I meet some old man in the park, and I start telling them Army stories, they start coming all over me. All right, well, here's one. All right, yeah, the day I registered for the Army, right? So my recruiter picks me up, on a Friday night, right? Around 5 or whatever, and he takes me to the Bonaventure Hotel over in downtown LA. And he's like, you see that line of people? He's like, get in that line, they'll tell you what to do. So I do, and then I register in, and then they give me this room key. And they're like, you better go to sleep early, we're gonna wake you up at 3 in the morning, right? I'm like, 3 in the morning, I'm 18 years old, right? I've never woken up that early before, but I'm like, all right, whatever. And so the next morning, sure as hell, 3 o'clock, the phone rings, right? So I pick it up, I'm like, hello, they're like, get up, get downstairs, get on this bus. So I do that, and then the bus takes us to this, I think it's this Air Force base in Long Beach. Anyway, we get off, and the first thing they do is they break us up into our divisions, right? Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. And it's obvious to everyone that all the pretty girls are in the Air Force, right? So I'm in the Army, right? I'm like, fuck! Anyway, so we go, we take this test. It's kind of it's like the SAT on steroids, it's crazy. And those of us that pass, they break us up in these little groups, right? And then so for me, they're like, all right, go into this room. And I walk in there, I'm like, what the fuck? It's all these dudes, and they're all lined up in their underwear and shit, and doing jumping jacks and shit. I'm like, you want me to go in there? They're like, hurry up, get in there, right? And the guy's like, hey, get in there, close the door, So I'm in there, like, take your clothes off, get in line. I'm like, what? I'm like, I guess, right? And so I get in my underwear, I get in line, I start doing jumping jacks and shit. What it is there's a sergeant in the front, and he's telling everyone, all right, jumping jacks. Okay, windmills. All right, whatever, squats. And these 2 other sergeants, they're walking up and down the line, right? They're watching everybody like hawks and shit. And all of a sudden, one of the sergeants, he yells at one of the guys next to me, right? He's like, you, do that windmill again, right? And he tries, but he can't get his arm all the way up, He's like, put your clothes on, you're out, get out, right? And that was it. He couldn't be in the military, And that was just the beginning, They were cutting people left and right and shit, vision tests, hearing, fucking all sorts of things. They're like, you're out, right? At one point, there's this dude, this big old Mexican dude, he's all tapped down and shit. He's all sitting there telling everyone he's like how his dad was a Marine and all his uncles are Marines and how he's gonna be like the best Marine in the world, right? All of a sudden this guy walks out and he goes, you're out. Right? It's like, what? He's like, why? He's like, because your neck is too thick. You know, you measured too thick. Yeah, that was it. He couldn't be a Marine. And that guy, he almost started crying right then and there in front of everybody. Yeah, it was crazy, you know? And after one after another, right? Finally, about 5 o'clock at night, I passed my final test and shit. And they're like, congratulations, son, you know, you made it in the Army and shit. So I shook the sergeant's hand, you know, I was like, so happy and like so proud of myself and shit, you know? Then the whole time I was in the Army, I couldn't wait to get out of that motherfucker. All right, I'll tell you another joke. Yeah, you know, the more I learn about space, the more I wish I didn't know anything about fucking space, right? I was watching a show the other day, and they were talking about, you know, Jupiter. Like, if anything happens to Jupiter, we're fucking screwed. Yeah, they're saying that one day Jupiter will move closer to the sun. And when that happens, you'll either shoot us out into space, or we'll collide with another planet, or we'll be thrown into the fucking sun. So I'm like, dude, what the fuck, you know, like, how is this helping my life at all, you know? Yeah, I can't affect the path of Jupiter and shit. All this is doing is just stressing me out a little more. It's just another white hair on my ass and shit. And now I told you guys this, now you have to worry about it too. Yeah, you gotta worry about this, like the health of your prostate, your colon. Oh, don't forget Uranus. Yeah. I could make so many Uranus jokes. I think I will create a whole just on Uranus. Okay, why do sailors give the best blowjobs? Because the captain always goes down with his ship. I'll tell you another joke or a story. Alright, the day I left for the Army, right? So my mom, she comes home from work, whatever, early, and she's never done this before. And we go to lunch, right? Like Denny's down the street. And I remember I was so nervous and shit, I couldn't eat anything. And then so we get home, and then I'm getting all my shit together, and so we're just waiting for the recruiter, right? And we're waiting for a couple of hours, you know? And after some point, I'm like thinking like, hey, what if he doesn't show up, you know? And I'm like, yeah, then I won't go to the Army, right? But anyway, the second that he said he'd be there, the fucking second that clock fucking hand hit, I hear these footsteps outside, you know? And I know it's him because he's walking really slow, like slower than a normal person would walk. And I hear him walking up the stairs and walking, you know, down the hall. And he stops at the door, in front of the door, and he knocks, right? He's like, all slow, right? So I open the door and it's him, you know? And I'd seen him about 5 times before this, but I'd never seen him in his full uniform and shit. And he's got like all these medals and shit, you know? I'm like, wow, this guy's like a fucking war hero. So anyway, I grab my stuff, I turn to my mom, and I'm like, bye mom, you know, then, you know, Asians, we're like not the most affectionate people or whatever, right? So she doesn't really hug me or anything, you know, she just scans it, goes, bye son. So I'm like, oh, okay, so I turn, I go with my recruiter, we go out the door, we go down the hall, right, and we're going downstairs, we get into his car, and we pull out, and just as we're about to, you know, pull out and shit, mom goes flying down the stairs and shit, you know, and like tears are fucking streaming down her face, you know. And then she runs to the back of the car, like she jumps onto the back of it and shit, you know, and she's like, I love you, son, you know, don't die, right? And like, come home and shit, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, you know, don't worry, mom, you know, I give her a great big hug and shit. And we fucking pull out, and I look behind, you know, and she's like standing by the side of the door, bawling, you know, and she's like, ah. I was like, oh man, that's crazy, you know. So I call her an hour later, right, because I'm all worried. And she's all just partying with all her friends. Ugh. Yeah, you know, April 14th is now a new national holiday. It's now National Burrito Day. And the very next day, April 15th, is now National Toilet Clogging Day. Yeah, you know that boat that crashed in that bridge in Baltimore about a year ago? Remember that? Yeah, it crashed in the Francis Scott Key Bridge. That's kind of ironic, right? Like, oh, say, can you see? There's a giant fucking boat coming! Yeah, I said the boat came from Singapore. I was like, ah, crap. Asian driver, you know. All right, I'll tell you a story. Let me see. All right, the day I met The Rock, right? Yeah, I was at this DMV in Hollywood. It was actually the DMV right over here. I was with my buddy and we're getting our license renewed. And we're waiting in line. He's like, hey, you see that guy over there? And I'm like, yeah. It's this guy, he's like in the middle, like talking to the supervisors. He's like, I think that's The Rock, right? And I looked and I'm like, I don't think so, right? He looked really slim. But then he smiled, right? And I'm like, you know what? Maybe, you know? So I look around the room and everyone's just kind of like pointing at him and like whispering, you know, you can see him like, and just like pointing at it and shit. And then you can feel this like excitement like building, you know, like literally every second it's like building. And at one point this girl screams, "It's The Rock!" Right? And everyone's like, "Oh shit." Anyway, when I go to get my picture taken, you know, he cuts the line to get the picture taken, right? He cuts right in front of me, you know? And so he's standing there looking right at me, right? And I could have asked for an autograph or a picture, anything, right? But I was so starstruck, you know? All I could do was just stare at him and go, right? The only thought in my head was, that's The Rock. You know, that's The Rock. That's The Rock, right? And he just looked at me like, whatever. And he went and got his picture taken and stuff, you know? And then after, like, all these people were coming up to him, getting their pictures and autographs and stuff. And I was just watching him like, oh man, you know, he's so cool, you know? Like, you could just tell that he was just so happy that people were just being nice to him, you know? And I was like, man, if I ever meet The Rock ever again, I'm gonna go right up to him and go, that's The Rock, can't help myself and shit. Alright, here's a joke I thought. I don't know, I gotta work on this, but here's Donald Trump singing to Elon Musk. Elon me, when you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody like Elon. Alright, you tell you another story. Okay, let's start. When I did M60 training, right? Alright, it's like one of the cool, I've seen a lot of cool things in the Army, right? But this is one of the coolest things I ever saw. Was, alright, so we're doing M60 training. The M60 is a light machine gun, right? It's a Rambo gun, right? And so we're sitting there, it's about 300 of us, right? And we're watching our 4 drill sergeants shoot the Rambo gun in the correct way, right? They're all 4 of them are lined up. And they're laying there, right? You know, doing short control bursts. And all of a sudden one of them's like, fuck this, right? And he gets up and he stands up and he holds the gun like Rambo, right? With one arm like this. Dog down. Anyway, and he's holding the other he's holding the bullets in the other hand, right? Like this, right? And he just starts to shoot like right? And all of us were watching, we're like, what the fuck? Right? We're like, fuck yeah, it's fucking awesome, right? Now the other 3 drill sergeants, they hear us screaming, right? And so they're like, what the fuck's going on, you know? And they look up and they see that guy up there, right, shooting. So they're like, oh fuck this. So all 3 of them, they stand up and they pick up their machine guns, right? So you got fucking 4 grown men standing there with machine guns, right? And behind them, this fucking 300 young guys were like, yeah, fuck yeah, it's fucking awesome. Just screaming at the top of our lungs and shit. Oh man, it's like the most fucking testosterone fueling day I've ever been fun and shit. Yeah, at the end of the day, we all had fucking sore throats and like full grown beards and shit. Dang. Yeah, you ever seen that picture of Bigfoot? Where it's like this and stuff?
Yeah.
Most people don't know, but that's actually taken from a 5-minute film of Bigfoot, like walk through the woods, you know? And I think that Bigfoot was real, right? Because I was watching this documentary, and they showed that Bigfoot was a female. Yeah, you clearly see that she has boobs, you know? And they're like swaying around as she's walking. So it must be real, right? Because it feels fake. Why would they put boobs on it? Like, they wouldn't do that, right? And, you know, for not having a bra or anything, they're actually pretty well formed. Yeah, I was like, damn, Bigfoot's got some nice tits. Like, what is this, like Sasquatch gone wild? Fuck. That's crazy, you know, I'm watching this alone on Saturday night. I'm like, this is freaking insane, you know? I never thought in a million years I'd be jerking off to Bigfoot. Think of some more. I'm trying to do this without looking at whatever, my sheet and all that. Yeah, whatever. I was having you know, when you're, eating pizza by yourself is kind of depressing, right? Yeah, it's like eating whatever cake or, you know, getting drunk by yourself. Yeah, basically like my last birthday. Let me tell you another story. Let this go. All right. You know, one of the other coolest things I've ever seen was night fire at the gun range, right? Now, when you're night firing, you don't like close your eye and aim or whatever because it's too dark, right? You keep both eyes open and you're just shooting. Now, every third bullet is a tracer round, right? It glows red. And so you're just adjusting your aim to that. And so it looks crazy. It looks like like you're in Star Wars or shit, right? And so I was walking to the bathroom, and I look over, and then they started shooting, and I was just like frozen. It was just so crazy. It looked like this, right? Because behind every target is like this hill, like a berm. So after it hits the thing, it shoots up into the air, right? But from my angle, it looked like this. They were just like, like that. It was like, like a fucking Star Wars show and shit. I was like, whoa. You know, it was so fucking crazy and shit. I was like so mesmerized that I almost forgot what I was fucking even gonna do and shit. And when I finally did make it to the bathroom, I almost forgot to jerk off. Yeah, you know, I've been attitude, whatever. I don't know if I have enough time for that joke. Alright, don't worry about it. Yeah, whatever, Bigfoot. You know, I was watching this Bigfoot show the other day, and I was struck as how dedicated these Bigfoot hunters were. Yeah, you know, like they're so devoted to something that might not even be real. Like comedians in their careers.
Oh.
Yeah, whenever you hear a guy bragging about how big his dick is, it's usually the opposite, right? It's usually really small, you know? I was talking to this guy the other day, he was like, oh yeah, man, my dick's so big, I'm hung like a horse. I was like, psh, yeah, I'm like a seahorse. Thanks. Yeah, you know, I think whatever Pride Month needs a mascot. I know the perfect one, the flamingo. Right, they're pink, you know, they love to dance. And they're like a peaceful, non-predatory type bird, right? All they eat is like brine shrimp and algae and shit. And nobody cares about brine shrimp, right? And even whatever, in like a group of flamingos, you know, they're not called a flock. No, they're called a flamboyance. And how gay is that, right? And even the name flamingo is flaming O. Right, flaming O, that's just like a burning butthole. And comedians will always tell you two things, right? They always tell you when they just get booked on a show. They always tell you when they just had sex. That's a bit juvenile, don't you think? Like myself, I haven't been booked on a show in months. But I did get late last week, so I'm gonna do thank you.
Yeah.